A warm welcome to the second part in the series, The Adventures of Donald Trump, by the 21st century version of Mark Twain. So let's get started right away. The very first trait or significant feature of Donald Trump, the character, I'm not talking about the President of the United States, I'm talking about a character in Mark Twain's novel, The Adventures of Donald Trump. So the very first feature that you would perhaps notice is that this character embodies a self-contradiction. This character is self-contradiction embodied. For example, does America need NATO? Or Donald Trump would say, no, America does not need NATO. In the very next moment, he would say, America needed NATO, but none of the countries in the NATO alliance came to our rescue when we were in great danger. Or take another example. Does Trump want to be a president of peace, or does he want to be a president of war? The point is that he wants to be both. And that's a self-contradiction I'm talking about. So, when you really pay attention to this aspect of our character, Donald Trump, our fictitious character, Donald Trump, you will certainly come to a diagnosis called bipolarity. Bipolarity. To put it more simply, I would say, Trump is at war with others, which is only too obvious. I've dealt with this in the previous video. But here I also must add another aspect to this conflictual orientation, that is, he's also in conflict with himself. In the same situation, the same context, we say with the same issue, he's in conflict with others, but unknowingly, he is also in conflict with himself, which, being a psychological phenomenon, is shrouded in complete incoherence or lack of awareness on the part of Trump. Trump would not realize that even if he lives for another century, he will not realize that he is a character at war with himself. Now, because he is not able to understand this aspect of his character aright, he comes under another psychological need, which is also a psychological moral need. I would rather say psychological and immoral need, to identify others as the sole source of all evil. Is Trump the cause of any problem? Does he do something which a person of responsibility should not be doing? Can he go wrong? Not at all. Whatever he says, whatever he does is 100% correct. And everybody else is in the wrong. If there is a problem, the problem is on account of others. And this he tries to reinforce by projecting himself, of course with the help of others, projecting himself as an agent of God. That is where Christianity comes in. Nothing offends me more than the idea that Trump is a great benefit to Christianity, or that global Christianity can gain because Trump is the President of the United States. Truth to tell, I can't think of a greater embarrassment to Christianity than Donald Trump. Though there are tens and thousands of Christians in America who ardently believe otherwise, I wish them good luck. If you do not know what the way of Jesus Christ is, then you can come to any conclusions and harbor any delusions, and nobody can help you. So that is the reason why Trump still remains popular with the American far right. And there are tens and thousands who sincerely believe that he is a godsend to take American Christianity, in fact, global Christianity, to the very zenith of its fulfillment. Now, what all of this put together tells us is the lamentable dearth of the capacity for self-criticism on the part of Trump. Those familiar with the teachings of Jesus Christ will realize that Jesus put a lot of emphasis on developing the capacity for self-criticism. Jesus said, why are you worried about the mote in the eyes of others? Rather pay attention to the beam in your own eye, then you will see more clearly. Right now, your tendency to find fault with everyone or to identify everybody as the source of evil is only because you don't realize the beam in your own eyes. So that's the point I'm making. So he has a compulsive need to shift the burden of responsibility onto everyone else other than himself. All this is part of this grand or broad phenomenon that we are trying to understand. The fact that our character, Donald Trump, in this novel by 20th century Mark Twain, The Adventures of Donald Trump, is embodied self-contradiction. Now, let's look at another aspect of this character. Our character, Donald Trump, has a penchant for acting impulsively, impulsive action. Now, our character, Trump, does not realize that this is not a virtue. Often he's inclined to think that this is a great virtue. It's not a virtue, rather. It arises out of a lamentable dearth or lack in self-control. Only a person who lacks self-control will act impulsively, particularly in official matters and in public life. And a person who lacks self-control also will lack self-understanding. And that goes very well with this freedom to act impulsively. In fact, psychologically, it is a well-proven fact that only when you keep your impulses under check, that you become clearer and clearer in your understanding of yourself as well as your understanding of others. So if you go on acting impulsively, if you don't develop the maturity to keep your impulses under bit and bridle, then your capacity to understand will remain infantile, underdeveloped, puerile. So such a person is actually, without his knowing it, powered and driven by all kinds of dark psychological forces, as 20th century depth psychology revealed, the writings particularly of Carl Jung, I can think of in this context. Very often people don't realize they are acting not necessarily because of objective reasons and purposes. They're acting rather because they are being powered from their subconscious mind, their unconscious mind, by certain psychic forces with which they have not come to terms. They're not even aware that these psychological forces are welling up from within. So, insofar as Trump, our character, lacks self-control, he will never agree that he ever contradicts himself. In fact, he'll be very indignant with you if you ever insinuated, if you ever dare to insinuate that he acts in self-contradictory ways. For example, most recent example, in connection with this projected or intended peace talk scheduled to take place in Islamabad, Pakistan. I saw myself, Trump, saying that the 10 points framework which Iran proposed can constitute a reasonable foundation for a peace negotiation or peace talks. Within 24 hours, he flip-flopped. He said, or rather, he made the White House spokesperson, that young lady, Caroline Leavitt, to say, well, Trump said nothing of the sort. Well, either my eyes led me astray, and I should have my eyes checked, and my ears also checked. Or what Caroline Levitt says is wrong. Either Trump said that the framework that Iran presented is acceptable, or he did not say. Which is right, you tell me. But according to the situation in front of us, both are correct. He did say and he didn't say. And that's typical of Trump. You can actually think of many such instances. So he's being truly himself when he manufactures instances of self-contradiction like this. And he reminds me of a very lovely little novel by Robert Louis Stevenson. It's quite famous. I'm sure you're also familiar. Every one of you will be familiar with the title. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's a novel, it's a story based on the psychological pattern of split personality. The same person acts in two different capacities, not realizing that he's doing so. When this character acts as Dr. Jekyll, he's only Dr. Jekyll. And later when he acts as Mr. Hyde, he's only aware of being Hyde. And when he is acting as Mr. Hyde, if somebody were to tell him, well, you the other day acted as, was behaving as, or you interacted with me as Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde would be very angry. The same pattern applies here. So unfortunately, our character, poor Donald Trump character in our story, does not know that his real enemy is inside of him. This applies to a large number of people. In fact, a vast majority of people in this world are like that. There are times when I felt this about myself. It took me a long while to realize that my real enemy is hiding within myself, and that's the reason why I started praying, Lord, deliver me from myself. That's one of the most sincere prayers I make. Lord, it is not from Satan, it's not from devil, it is not from Beelzebul, it is not from Mephistopheles that I need protection. I need protection from myself. Because of forces, the dark and sinister forces that can pitch me head foremost into complete destruction and personal anarchy are all lurking inside of me. And unless and until those dark forces are kept well under control, for which I really need spiritual, divine help, I'll be completely undone. So this is something that our great character Donald Trump does not realize. He does not know that his own shadow often acts as his enemy. And therefore, is a person who has not really come to terms with himself. That's the second point I want to make. The third point is this. When I watch our character, I'm not talking about the President of the United States, our character Donald Trump in full flow, I see two contradictory things in him. Bravado and cowardice. Bravado and cowardice. These are the two faces of the same coin called our character Donald Trump. In one context, he's full of bravado. I'll wipe out a whole civilization. In 4 hours flat, I'll wipe out an entire civilization. And in a few hours' time, he'll plead with Iran to come to a discussion, peace talk, etc. Now, please understand that bravado and cowardice are not contradictions. They are the same, they're two faces of the same reality. Only a coward will indulge in public bravado. If you're confident about yourself, you don't have to beat your chest and project yourself as a modern day giant, whatever it is, Hercules. You'll go about your work in a very matter-of-fact fashion. No, not our friend, not our character, Trump. Bravado, bravado. Every word. Whatever he does is like nobody has ever done before. Never in the history of humanity, never in the history of America. Not even close. That's bravado. At the same time, the commander-in-chief of the mightiest army in the world is trying to somehow extricate himself from the Iran theater of war. And he's actually pleading even with China, and leave alone China, Pakistan of all places, by common agreement, a failed state, a sponsor of terrorism, a discredited state, has become now the agent of peace. Can you imagine? That's the world in which we are living. So, one aspect of the coward in our character, Donald Trump, is that he despises victims. When he realized that President Zelensky had its back to the wall, he despised him. He treated him like dirt. Whereas he has great respect for Putin, who is the aggressor, who is a rogue. But nobody dares call him a rogue because he has mighty power. So a coward will have reverential attitude to tyrants and despots. He will spit upon the victims of tyrants. That pattern is far too clear. It doesn't need any further explanation. Also, only a coward threatens and sinks into ranting and vulgar abuses. You think of some of the recent Truth Social postings by Donald Trump. It's a text that I, as an educated person, cannot even read. To think that the President of America can stoop to the level of using such foul language, vulgar, uncouth, uncultured words, expressions. After all, style is the man. Only a coward can write like that. It's very sad. It's very sad indeed. That's the third point. Now I come to the fourth point. Our character, Donald Trump, not the President of the United States of America, character in 20th century Mark Twain's novel, The Adventures of Donald Trump, wants to be feared, not loved. Not even respected. He wants to be feared. I tell you that this desire to be feared bespeaks a state of personality under development. If you're a developed person, a Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King will not want to be feared by the people. A Mother Teresa would not want to be feared by the people. They would want to be loved. And they wouldn't even expect to be respected, but people cannot but respect them. But all this is of no value for our friend Trump, our character Trump. He wants to be feared. He doesn't realize that fear is of two kinds. One, fear which is flavored with respect. And that's the kind of fear that we feel towards people who have some touch of greatness about them. The second kind of fear is purely negative. For example, when you see a snake, you fear. When you see a wild animal, when you see a madman, when you see a drunkard, when you see a street thug, you fear. Do you want that kind of fear? But unfortunately, our character in Mark Twain's novel does not know the difference between these two kinds of fear. That's the fourth point. The fifth, and perhaps the final point, is this. Our character dramatizes the decline and the degeneration of the country he represents. There's a sync between Trump, the character, and the people of America, at least at a certain section of the people of America, the American far right. When a great novelist creates a work of art, it also has a kind of artistically transformed, sublimated connections to reality. He wants world domination, but cannot compromise on personal convenience or gain, much less suffer loss or hurt. That is true both of Trump and the political, economic, religious faction that he represents, the American far right. Every one of them wants America to dominate the world, but none of them wants to pay the price for it. That is a sign of degradation. It is cheap. So This character, therefore, signifies or draws our attention to the fact that the American consciousness is now shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Whereas the founders of America envisaged America to be a city set on a hill that it may give light to all nations in the world. It was an expanding vision of the significance, the growing significance of America that would embrace the entire globe. In contrast, it is now shrinking and shrinking and shrinking more and more into itself, which is neatly encapsulated in that slogan, America First. America First, in practical terms, would only amount to America alone. That's exactly what it's coming to. It's a painful reality. The sooner the Americans realize this, the better. America stands painfully isolated in the global village. The plight of India is not any different, as was revealed in the wake of Operation Sindoor, and now in the wake of these peace negotiations that are taking place in Pakistan. If Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru were the Prime Minister of India, rest assured, he would have been mediating between Iran and the United States. Rest assured, there's no question about it. But of course, like Trump, our own friend Modi makes a hobby out of deriding, ridiculing, belittling, casting aspersions on Nehru. All the evils of India, even today, are on account of Nehru. So that's the unfortunate psychological kind of degradation that has overtaken the globe as a whole. So the American consciousness is shrinking, whereas it should be the other way around. It should continue to expand. And the reason why the American consciousness is shrinking is that it has substituted the two-way thinking process with a one-way thinking process. America First means that everybody in the global village must adjust themselves to the convenience and profit of America. Everybody must exist for America. America will not exist for anyone. It's a one-way traffic. And the moment you place yourself in this kind of mold, your consciousness cannot but shrink, and shrink progressively. And you actually put yourself in a very, very ridiculous, pathetic light. And the sooner the Americans realize this, the better. So there was a time, see, America was always a country of economic need. It was economically a predatory country. America prospered not merely because Americans were talented and they were working very hard. America prospered and prospered as wonderfully as it did, also because, and largely because, America knew how to exploit others. For example, the whole war about war in Iran is about the petrodollar empire. By creating a global trade system focused on dollar, America prospered in a very magical manner. So, but at the same time, till recently, till the time Trump took over, there was some kind of a balance between American greed and American generosity. The American people were the most generous people on the face of this earth, without a doubt. But now that is changing. This two-way flow is now being substituted with a one-way flow. Everything should flow into America. Now that runs counter to the logic of life, nature, and history, and therefore it signals the degeneration and decline of the American mind, the American culture, the American moral sense, the American humanity. That's the reason why I have been saying repeatedly in the last 4 or 5 years that I can clearly see the inevitable decline of America. America will not continue to be the global dominant power beyond the next 3, 4, 5 years. About that, I'm absolutely certain. Great changes are going to happen. In fact, this Iran theater of war is a very significant thing, as I pointed out in one of my earlier videos, because it is a forerunner, it's a harbinger of very profound changes, not just in this region, but globally. Things are going to be very different in a short span of time, and we'll soon enter into a world that we have never seen before. So, the American attitude America first, make America great again by being selfish, runs counter to the logic of life, logic of history, logic of common sense. So, this cannot but have very unfortunate consequences, particularly for America. Even though time is running out, let me make one more point and I'll stop. There is one very important truth that the Iran war has brought to light, and that is, for all the pulls in different directions that human selfishness would make, different countries pull in different directions, different combinations, formations of blocs, axes, etc. Axis of evil, axis of resistance, and this, whatever be. The fact of the matter is, end of the day, the earth is one, humanity is one. And that is a clear message. Look at what has happened in this very, very otherwise insignificant patch of world geography. A small little stretch of water, Strait of Hormuz, that has touched the life of every person on planet Earth. That is the degree of interrelatedness and interdependence in which humankind exists today. And those who refuse to realize it, and those who act in violence of this immutable reality, will invite destruction upon themselves and the countries that they represent. Never mind which country it is, never mind which leader it is, whether it is Putin or Modi or the Chinese Xi Jinping, whoever it is. Whoever acts in violation of this principle, the fact that the globe is one, humanity is one, what happens to one part will affect the whole, entire, the sum total of humanity. This is the ineradicable, inviolable, I would say, divine law. And those who violate it will pay for it. And that is a silver lining on the cloud. The Iran episode has left us in no doubt whatsoever, has given us unprecedented clarity based on direct experience that the globe is one, humanity is one, and only those who act in harmony with this fundamental, immutable truth will have a place in the logic of life. Others will be swept away by the force of history. Thank you. All the best.